Good morning and welcome to the Senior Hour, which is sponsored by Comfort Keepers in Home Care and Advanced Audiology. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host,
Dr. Dorio,
on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. This is a show for, about, and by seniors, giving information to enhance one's quality of life. And our guest this morning is Linda Davies, and she's the Executive Director of the Domestic Violence Center of the Santa Clarita Valley.
Hey.
Welcome, Linda.
Great to be here. Did you invite me on today because my birthday on Saturday, I turned 65, and I'm now officially a senior?
Woohoo!
Is that why I'm here today?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Join
Happy
the crowd.
birthday.
I know when you just said it's for and by seniors, I'm sitting, oh, now I really qualify. Sitting here, yeah.
Well, I think you qualified when you were 55.
Yes,
Something
probably.
Well, depending
Which,
on.
to me, that's not a senior. 65, you're a senior.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
That's when you can retire.
Well, when you get your Medicare.
Yes.
That's really what it
that's-
is when all of a sudden something
That's
comes
what
in the
I
mail
think
and-
of as being a senior, when you're 65
Yeah.
and you're on Medicare.
Yeah.
True, but you know, some of the housing here it's 55,
That's
Yeah.
true.
so which is understandable, and I think AARP wants you to join when you're 50 because that's
Right.
when you start getting the announcements to join. So yeah, it's just, and some people are 90 years old and they don't feel like a senior, so it's all relative, you know.
Well, I mean, what
Well,
is
I don't feel old.
There you go.
No, and I'm 80 years old,
Yeah.
which I cannot believe. I don't feel like an 80-year-old. Oh,
But you know, it's good because you know I think as seniors in the past I think all of us thought a senior is somebody who's old, decrepit, and has no memory and things like that. And you know, you don't want
That's right.
You just don't want that label as you get older. That's not a fair
It's not a
assessment.
fair, yeah.
So unfortunately, but you know, I don't know if any of you watch the Academy Awards on Sunday night.
Yes, I did.
And I don't. But, you know, Robin was watching the show, so I came in from the hospital, and it was quite entertaining.
Yeah.
And, you know, I felt that, you know, I thought, yeah, this is pretty good. I'll sit down and watch. And it got toward the end where they had Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway on.
I know.
And, you know, when Bonnie and Clyde came out 50 years ago,
Right.
you know, that was kind of I loved the movie.
Yeah.
And here they were 50 years later, and I
Yeah.
sat there and I thought to myself, it's been 50 years since they were in that movie. And then this whole thing developed with the incident that occurred, the reading of the wrong name. But as Robin and I sat there, we thought something is wrong, you know, with Warren Beatty and we thought, oh my goodness, it's going to be a senior moment and all this other stuff. And I'm really ashamed that I was thinking that way, because you could tell the stage manager had his earphones on. They were looking at the cards. We knew something was wrong, but you know, we thought, oh, Warren Beatty, you know, he's older now. And it was so wrong for us to think that way. And here we were, and here we're seniors thinking that way. And how we thought, you know, when we were younger, how seniors are, and here we're still in that vogue. So whether you're 50, 55, or 90 years old, it doesn't matter. It's, you know, truly where your heart is and what you want to do as you grow older and what your quality of life is going to be like.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I do think it's always good to catch yourself in those isms. You know what I mean? Like when you are thinking like that. And I actually didn't go there with him at that moment in time, because I kind of felt something had messed up, because I saw the guys coming out and they never come out, like with the
never come
headphones
out.
on and kind of messing around in the crowd. So I kind of knew it wasn't him at that time. And maybe I am, like, recently been thinking more sensitively about this too, where and I was talking about this earlier before we got on the air, is the fact of how easily it is to kind of have a thought about an older person or a stereotype about an older person, and we get talked to all the time about having stereotypes about other categories of people. You know what I'm saying? But yet in our society, we don't respect our older adults enough so that if people make fun of them or jump to conclusions about them, or, I mean, I don't even like that comment, it's a senior moment, because I love that I work with young people, and every time I see them kind of forget something, or I really love it.
A junior moment.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It just happens to all of us. Or in a parking lot, you know, when people are out there looking for their cars, and when they're like 25, I like yell over, "I love to see you like that. I love to see you lost in the parking lot."
Go ahead,
I'm not
get
the
more
only one
lost.
who does that.
Yeah, because I think we are hard on ourselves too, as people growing older, because we worry about these things, you know, instead of being able to embrace them together, you know, which is what we need to
Or
really
do something about it and recognize that most of the time it's just something that occurs, but other times it could be a significant change in a person and how their life is.
Right.
And to be able to just be aware and not take that big leap forward that, it's something really bad, but to look back and say, maybe I just need to be mindful of what might be going on with my loved one or my friend.
Right. Absolutely. In a caring way. And not, because
absolutely.
everybody's going to get here. Hopefully, if they're lucky
That's
enough,
right.
everyone will be an older person someday. You know, and that's not true of some other things. You know, so we need to, I think, build that respect
Beforehand.
And also, in a way, I think we have to respect ourselves, because I think we tend to give it away too, because we feel like we're getting maybe older, weaker. You know, we kind of buy into some of the stuff that's said in society, and then I think that we need to really empower each other to really be excited about where we are at this time in our lives. And what
Absolutely.
does this really offer us, and what things are available to us, and to kind of embrace it.
And making sure that we understand that we're not, you know, things happen to us. I mean, we trip, we fall, and just that the memory part and the physical part, and things just start to happen. But we shouldn't, we're not going to downplay it, but I don't think it should be something emphasized. What we need to do is be able to allow people to have the frailties of life, but move forward with it and not make a big deal over it.
Yes, I agree with that too.
You know, it's interesting. I'll get a thought in my mind, and I'll go charging down the hall, and I think, wait. Slow down, Barbara. Slow down, because all of a sudden my body is going, what are you doing? What's the rush?
Yeah.
And I know of people who constantly complain that they're getting older. And I'm thinking, what? You don't want the alternative? I'm loving it that I'm getting older.
But what should go along with that is older but wiser. Because when we have that one important part of life experience that we have gone through, I think it's important that we're able to pass that forward to the younger generation. And I think for myself, that happened where I learned my dad was older. When I was a teen, he was already on Medicare. So, I knew someone, but he never behaved as an older senior ever that I can recall.
Yeah.
So, but I saw that as an example of someone who was, teaching the three boys that he was responsible for how to live life in a way that was responsible, that was honorable, that treated people with dignity and with respect. To me, I learned that from my dad, who was an older dad, and I'm just so happy that now in a position where I can be, passing it forward, to that younger generation. I'm more than happy to be able to do that, because I think that allowed me to accelerate faster in life and understand things a little bit better and faster. So, right now, I think that's our duty as seniors to look back and say, let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that the younger generation gains from our experience and moves forward in a better way. If we can give them that, we can give them the technology. They can take that and run with it. For us, the radio, the television, use the cars, the freeways, all of that, we move forward, and that's great. but life's experiences, how do you gain that other than living through it? But you can gain it from the people around you who have gone through it and look back now and say, hey, this is how you handle it, this is what you do. And I think that applies then to domestic violence and what you're involved with, Linda, as we move into segue into that, because that's why you're here. That's why you're here in this community and doing that kind of job. Because to be honest with you, 25 years ago, this was an acceptable. It was a problem that was accepted, and now it's not. Right. And it should never have been accepted before. But now we are saying it's a problem, and we have to do something about it.
Right. Yeah. So, and I also feel that there are many women, like I was at a church recently giving a talk. They had invited me in to talk to the congregation. And this woman, and I think she was 80, maybe 83, put her hand on my arm and basically said, you don't know how many of us are grateful that you exist now in the community. Mm-hmm. But in her eyes, I saw tears because we didn't exist for her when she probably went through her domestic violence.
Well, that's very interesting that you say that, because I was involved with the community hotline up here in the 70s. And that's when we had a severe drug and alcohol problem up here. And not only were the drugs and alcohol, but there was a lot of domestic violence as a result of people involved with heavy drugs and heavy alcohol. And that was when, after that drug program got started here, then a group of us got together and also started the Domestic Violence Center up here. And that's been a long time ago.
Yeah, 30 some odd years ago.
Yes.
At this point in time.
So how do we define for our senior listeners domestic violence? Because it's not, we always think of violence, that something is physical, but there's also the mental aspect of it that is taking place. And, that sometimes goes unrevealed. And I think it's important that we talk about that, so our senior listeners, not only women but men, hear that there can be so-called domestic violence that is coming in different ways, and and it doesn't necessarily have to be a spouse. It could be
a son, a
daughter, or a neighbor, or anybody else.
Emotional, psychological abuse.
Yes.
Well, I was involved in a relationship. My first marriage was that. There was no hitting.
Right.
No
I think
actual
that's
slapped around.
I think because the law, the penal code, is physical abuse. Okay, that's really what it is. And so that's where we tend to, or society tends to think, that's what domestic violence is.
That's right.
But domestic violence is a series of behaviors where someone has power and control over another person.
That's
and
right.
that means a financial control, emotional control, it's isolation from friends and family, it's sexual control, it can be spiritual control, not allowing them to worship God in the way that they believe in, or even to make fun of it enough so that they don't even want to partake in it anymore. Or at times, I think also what happens to victims of domestic violence is they wonder where God is in the midst of what happens to them. Mm-hmm. So, and so I think that with the seniors, especially with seniors who may be living alone or living in the home and depending on caregivers, that's something else that we see. There could be a lot of elder abuse in that situation.
Right. That's right.
And they tend to not want to, just like in a relationship that's a marriage. I mean, nobody wants to break up their marriage. Nobody wants to break up their family. So it tends to be that the person who's being abused tends to feel like if I keep trying, something will change. Something will change.
It'll get better.
And get better. And so with in an in-home situation, when somebody is talking or actually taking care of you, you are also feeling very vulnerable, because if you kind of report them or confront them, they may leave you. They may leave you alone. And I think that's really a hard thing for a lot of people that are in that situation. I've been to the hospital before. They call us at times to come over when there's a domestic violence situation and the patient would like to see an advocate. We'll go to Henry Mayo to talk to them. And there was one person where the abuser was actually controlling her medication to the point that how she ended up in the hospital was he wasn't giving her enough of her insulin.
Ooh.
And so she would always end up having to go in and have it be, regulated again. And then they would call because they said they see this a lot and they really felt like this was an abusive situation that she was in. And so you may find that in a lot of these situations as well. So, and then I think the other thing that's hard right now is the isolation for elderly too. And then I don't think families understand. I mean, they get busy with their own lives, but I recently was reading something that said that like isolation to a senior is worth on their physical health is like smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's how isolation affects them. And so how do families understand that or go visit with their families more often, or how do we set up programs that go in and do that? And that's something that we're trying to look at it now at this point in time too with our agency.
Isn't it hard sometimes? I mean, domestic violence or whatever, physical, emotional, I mean, sometimes it's hard to decide, is there really something there? It's on occasion, most of the time it's clear cut. But there's sometimes that you don't know. You don't know, is it just someone who is more susceptible because of their personality or just how they were brought up or, just the situation in itself? Isn't that hard?
Well, I think that's hard for everybody. I mean, like a friend may say, I think you're in an abusive relationship. And so a lot of times when people come in and they fill out our intake paperwork and they start to look at the different categories and the different subcategories under that, and they start to realize, oh my goodness, this is happening to me. Or they look at the power and control wheel and all of a sudden they say, oh, I can't believe I am in an abusive relationship. Look at the way this is defined. And so I think it would really be helpful. I'll give our hotline number because we do have a 24-hour hotline that there's always an advocate at the end of that line. It's a 661-259-4357. And that would be a place where you could call and say, hey, this is happening in my life. Can you kind of tell me whether you feel like this is abusive or not, or what are the resources for me? But can I just chat with you for a little bit about what's happening? And the other resources to really look on our website, because we have all kinds of questions about what domestic and answers to what domestic violence is, and that's just the dvc-scv.org, that website. And so I think for the seniors themselves, I think really the hard part is, I think a lot of it is the caregivers, the family members, the people that are in their lives constantly, and them being afraid in some ways to say something or to get that help because of the fear of isolation, the fear that somebody's going to walk out and not come back.
And that is a very real fear.
Right.
It really is.
And the other number I brought, which we've talked about before, is that elder abuse hotline, which is 877-477-3646.
Yes.
So that's another one.
And we need to take a break. Yes. And we'll be back in a few moments. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.